Day 57. Deuteronomy 14-16. Deuteronomy chapter 14. In mourning for the dead they are not to follow the ways of the Gentiles, the distinction of clean and unclean meats, ordinances concerning tithes, and first fruits. Be the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness for the dead, because thou art a holy people to the Lord thy God, and he chose thee to be his peculiar people to all nations that are upon the earth. Eat not the things that are unclean. Unclean. See the emsations unleath. 11. These are the beasts that they shall eat, the ox, and the sheep, and the goat, the hart, and the rote, the buffalo, the chamois, the pagog, the wild goat, the camelopardalis. Every beast that divideth the hoof in two parts, and cheweth the cud, ye shall eat. But of them that chew the cud, but divide not the hoof, ye shall not eat, such as the camel, the hare, and the cherub, because they chew the cud, but divide not the hoof, they shall be unclean to thee. The swine also, because they divide the hoof, but cheweth not the cud, shall be unclean. The fuss they shall not eat, and the carcass they shall not touch. These shall they eat of all that abide in the waters, all that have fins and scales they shall eat. Such as are without fins and scales ye shall not eat, because they are unclean. All birds that are clean ye shall eat. The unclean eat not, to wit, the eagle, and the gripe, and the osprey, the ringtail, and the vulture, and the kite according to their kind, and all of the raven's kind, and the ostrich, and the owl, and the loris, and the auk according to its kind, the heron, and the swan, and the stork, and the cormorant, the porphyrion, and the knife-crow, the bittern, and the pterodrian, every one in their kind, the huboso, and the bat. Everything that creepeth, and hath little wings, shall be unclean, and shall not be eaten. All that is clean ye shall eat. But whatsoever is dead of itself, eat not thereof. Give it to the stranger that is within thy gates to eat, or sell it to him, because thou art the holy people of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not boil a kid in the milk of his dam. Every year thou shalt set aside the tithes of all thy fruits that the earth bringeth forth, and thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, that his name may be called upon therein, the tithe of thy corn, and thy wine, and thy oil, and the firstborn of thy herds and thy sheep, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God at all times. But when the way and the place which the Lord thy God shall choose are far off, and he hath blessed thee, and thou canst not carry all these things thither, thou shalt sell them all, and turn them into money, and shalt carry it in thy hand, and shalt go to the place which the Lord shall choose, and thou shalt buy with the same money whatsoever pleaseth thee, either of the herds or of sheep, wine also and strong drink, and all that thy soul desireth, and thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God, and shalt feast, thou and thy house, and the lover that is within thy gates. Beware thou forsake him not, because he hath no other part in thy possession. 30. Thou shalt separate another tithe of all things that grow to thee at the time, and shalt lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite that hath no other part nor possession with thee, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, that are within thy gates, shall come and shall eat and be filled, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the works of thy hands that thou shalt do. Deuteronomy chapter 15. The law of the 7th year of remission. The firstlings of cattle are to be sanctified to the Lord. In the 7th year thou shalt make a remission, which shall be celebrated in this order. He to whom anything is owing from his friend or neighbor or brother cannot demand it again, because it is the year of remission of the Lord. If a foreigner or a stranger thou mayst exact it, of thy countryman and neighbor thou shalt not have power to demand it again. And there shall be no poor nor beggar among thee, for the Lord thy God may bless thee in the land which he will give thee in possession. There shall be no poor, etc. It is not to be said as a promise that there should be no poor in Israel, as appears from B11, where we learn that God's people would never be at a loss to find objects for the charity, but it is an ordinance that all should do their best endeavors to prevent any of their brethren from suffering the hardships of poverty and want. Yes, so if thou hear the voice of the Lord thy God, and keep all things that he hath ordained, and which I command thee this day, he will bless thee as he hath promised. Thou shalt lend to many nations, and thou shalt borrow of no man. Thou shalt have dominion over very many nations, and no one shall have dominion over thee. If one of thy brethren that dwelleth within thy gates of thy city in the land which the Lord thy God will give thee come to poverty, thou shalt not harden thy heart, nor close thy hand, but shalt open it to the poor man. Thou shalt lend him that which thou perceivest he hath need of. But where last perhaps a wicked thought steal in upon thee, and thou say in thy heart, the 7th year of remission draweth nigh, and thou turn away thy eyes from thy poor brother, denying to lend him that which he asketh, lest he cry against thee to the Lord, and it become sin unto thee. But thou shalt give to him, neither shalt thou do anything craftily in relieving his necessities, that the Lord thy God may bless thee at all times, and in all things to which thou shalt do thy hand. There will not be wanting poor in the land of thy habitation. Therefore I command thee to open thy hand to thy needy and poor brother at life in the land. When thy brother, Hebrew man or Hebrew woman, is sold to thee, and hath served thee 6 years, in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free, and when thou sendest him out free, thou shalt not let him go away empty, but shalt give him for his way out of thy flocks, and out of thy barn floor, and thy winepress, wherewith the Lord thy God shall bless thee. Remember that thou also wast a bondservant in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God made thee free, and therefore I now command thee this. But if he say, I will not depart, because he loved thee, and thy house, and findeth that he is well with thee, thou shalt take an awl, and bow through his ear in the door of thy house, and he shall serve thee forever. Thou shalt do in like manner to thy woman to serve it also. Turn not away thy eyes from them when thou makest them free, because he hath served thee 6 years according to the wages of a hireling. But the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the works that thou doest. Of the firstlings that come of thy herds and thy sheep thou shalt sanctify the Lord thy God, whatsoever it is of the male sex. Thou shalt not work with the firstling of the bullock, and thou shalt not shear the firstlings of thy sheep. In the sight of the Lord thy God shalt thou eat them every year, in the place that the Lord shall choose, thou and thy house. But if it have a blemish, or be lame, or blind, or in any part disfigured or feeble, it shall not be sacrificed to the Lord thy God. But thou shalt eat it within the gates of thy city. The clean and the unclean shall eat them alike, as the robe and as the hart. Only thou shalt take heed not to eat their blood, but pour it out on the earth as water. Deuteronomy chapter 16. The 3 principal solemnities to be observed. Just judges to be appointed in every city, all occasions of idolatry to be avoided. Observe the month of Nicoin, which is the first of the spring, that thou mayest celebrate the feast of the Lord thy God, because in this month the Lord thy God brought thee out of Egypt by night. And thou shalt sacrifice the feast of the Lord thy God, of sheep and of oxen, in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, that his name may dwell there. Thou shalt not eat with it leavened bread. 7 days shalt thou eat without leaven the bread of affliction, because thou camest out of Egypt in fear, that thou mayst remember the day of thy coming out of Egypt all the days of thy life. No leaven shall be seen in all thy coast for 7 days, neither shall any of the flesh of that which was sacrificed the first day in the evening remain until morning. Thou mayest not immolate the feast in any one of thy cities, which the Lord thy God will give thee, but in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, would his name be one there, thou shalt immolate the feast in the evening, at the going down of the sun, at which time thou camest out of Egypt. And thou shalt dress, and eat it in a place which the Lord thy God shall choose, and in the morning rising up thou shalt go into thy dwellings. 6 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day, because it is the assembly of the Lord thy God, thou shalt do no work. Thou shalt number unto thee 7 weeks from that day, wherein thou didst put the sickle to the corn. And thou shalt celebrate the festival of weeks to the Lord thy God, a voluntary oblation of thy hand, which thou shalt offer according to the blessing of the Lord thy God. And thou shalt feast before the Lord thy God, thou, and thy son, and thy daughter, and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite that is within thy gates, and the stranger and the fatherless, and the widow who abide with thee in the place which the Lord thy God shall choose, that his name may dwell there. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a servant in Egypt, and thou shalt keep and do the things that are commanded. Thou shalt celebrate the solemnity also of tabernacles 7 days, when thou hast gathered in thy fruit of the barn floor and of the winepress. And thou shalt make merry in thy festival time, thou, thy son, and thy daughter, thy manservant, and thy maidservant, the Levite also, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou celebrate feasts to the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord shall choose, and the Lord thy God will bless thee in all thy fruits, and in every work of thy hands, and thou shalt be in joy. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. No one shall appear with his hand empty before the Lord, but every one shall offer according to what he hath, according to the blessing of the Lord his God, which he shall give him. Thou shalt appoint judges and magistrates in all thy gates, which the Lord thy God shall give thee, in all thy tribes, that they may judge the people with just judgment, and not go aside to either part. Thou shalt not accept person nor gifts, for gifts blind the eyes of the wise, and change the words of the just. Thou shalt follow justly after the which is just, that thou mayst rise and possess the land, which the Lord thy God shall give thee. Thou shalt plant no grove, nor any tree near the altar of the Lord thy God. Neither shalt thou make nor set up to thyself a statue, which things the Lord thy God hateth.